Welcome to NHA Today, where we explore the path to lasting health and fulfillment through a whole food, plant-based lifestyle. Each week, we bring you real conversations with doctors, health experts, and everyday individuals who have transformed their lives through food, mindset, and community. This is NHA Today, powered by the National Health Association.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the NHA podcast. My name is Maxime Sigouin. I'm going to be your co-host today. I am the founder and CEO of Fit Vegan Coaching. And we have a very special guest, a dear friend of mine, Mr. Chuck Carroll, who is the host of the Exam Room podcast and the weight loss champion. Chuck, welcome to the show.
Man, thanks for having me. I'm stoked that you're hosting the NHA podcast, man. This is awesome.
Well, I'm happy to be hosting it. I'm happy that I'm recording with you. I dressed nice for you. I even turned on the fireplace for you.
I know. It's so, I don't know, pristine, exquisite. I don't know, serene. That's the word I'm looking for. And I'm like dressed down. Typically, I only put on the tie when I'm hosting. So now I feel like I'm letting you down, man. You put on the jacket for me. Should I go get a tie? I need to get a tie?
You look phenomenal. You don't need to put on a tie. You're gonna outdress me if you put on a tie. So we'll keep it like that. Sweet, man. So today, like we spoke previously before this recording, and we want to talk about a topic that I think a lot of people would get value on. And you and I talk a lot about, obviously, nutrition is a big part. You know, I'll talk a little bit about fitness, but there's always a component of health that a lot of people don't address, and that's stress. And I think you and I are going to be able to go in depth and have a fun conversation on this. But just for the people that might be listening or kind of hearing your story for the first time with kind of the recent news, you might kind of setting a little bit of the foundation as to why this conversation about stress is going to be important.
Oh, absolutely. So for those who are not familiar with my background, former sports media guy, former news reporter, 420 pounds at my heaviest, got all the way down to 140 and created the Exam Room podcast. I adopted the plant-based style, obviously, before that. Really used that plant-based diet to keep and maintain that weight loss. Even though I had weight loss surgery, before I went plant-based, that weight was creeping up, and I didn't want to get back to my old habits. Well, long story short, I put all of my eggs in that one nutrition basket and completely ignored other facets of my life, which caused an incredible amount of stress. We're talking overworked, going through major life changes, not putting my priorities where they should be. And it was like acid on my soul. And when you do this for so many years, and this is the really just like glossed over version of it, but your body eventually breaks and it shuts down. And what doctors and many trips to the Mayo Clinic later have discovered is that I literally have burned out the portion of my brain that can control whether you're in rest and relax mode or fight or flight mode. And I am chronically right now stuck in fight or flight mode, which means that I'm not getting enough rest even when I sleep a full 8 hours at night. It's causing all kinds of digestive issues with me. And so I've been working with some really incredible gastroenterologists. But the biggest gains that I've seen have been working with gastroenterologists who also specialize in what they call DGBI, or disorder of gut-brain interaction, and really working to retrain my brain and fire back up the portion of my brain that has literally burned out, so I can finally breathe easy again and get some peace.
So stress, being go, working way more hours than one should, I think was a big contributing factor to being in that position. Do you want to talk about why we work so hard? And then we can talk about like how we manage stress and kind of how we navigate it after.
Why do we work so hard? I don't know. My goal, I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, Maxim, it was a couple of things. One, I believe so truly in the work that I do with the Exam Room podcast and educating and inspiring people to take healthy steps for themselves. I love hearing from people, just as I'm sure you do with Fit Vegan Coaching, the successes that they have had, the transformations that they have made that they never thought was possible. And that begins with the work that you and I do and just laying that foundation, educating them about nutrition, you educating them about both nutrition and, building muscle up, getting that body recomposition. And so that really fires me up. But then the other thing is, because while the show was having such great success, literally everything else in my life was just a mess. And so
Mm,
I kind of lost myself into work. I've always been what Dr. Will Bolsowitz will call a grinder, somebody who
yeah.
puts in an enormous amount of hours, but I really took it overboard. So I was working like 16, 17-hour days every single day and just locking myself away in this little studio that we built here in the house. And again, completely ignoring my responsibilities as a brother, as a son, as a husband, and just it was like acid being poured on my soul whenever I left this room. And so I just stayed here and I worked 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 and I tried my best to ignore everything else. But you reach that tipping point and eventually you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And if there's anything that anybody takes away from today's show, it's to deal with it before it really hits the fan and your body breaks.
Yeah. I'll chime in and get personal with you too. I'm gonna leave you out there. There's a you know there's a, to me also there's a the form of escapism that comes from working, and when certain areas of life potentially we're not necessarily happy with them and they aren't going the way that we want to, I'll 100% focus more on something that I can control, that I'm good at, and so which will be like business or podcast or coaching and all those things. So yeah, the overworking will come as a means of feeling that there's a sense of control, feeling like everything is all good, even though certain aspects all good, but because this area is so big, it feels like it's compensating for it. Yeah, up until the point where, your wife comes to you is like, hey, we haven't had a date night in a while. Hey, all those things are happening. Start to have, gut issues. You don't sleep as well. Um, we're not the only one, because since you and I recorded an initial podcast for kind of like your big reveal and your announcement of what you were going through, I've had a lot of conversations about stress, and a lot of people, not necessarily in the space of whole food plant based, but a lot of people that are leaders in other areas are having some of the same issues because, yeah, that escapism, that sense of control, but also like you mentioned, that sense of passion and wanting to serve sometimes pushes you overboard. It's like you want to help so much that you forget to take care of yourself so that you can help people for longer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, you think about we operate in the plant-based community, so that's essentially 1% of the population. Then you get whole food plant-based SOS free, and then you're talking about a fraction
Yeah.
of the population. But when we're talking about stress, that is 100% of each and every human being on the face of the earth. There is nobody who is immune to stress, and it's a matter of how we deal with it. And you hit the nail on the head when you called it escapism. So outside of the borders of this studio, I'll tell you what was going on. In the 10 years leading up to me getting sick, my mother-in-law nearly died, was in a coma for 6 weeks. And my wife thought that we were going to lose her. And those two are thick as thieves, always have been, best of
Yeah.
friends. Regains her health by a miracle. Literally, they're pulling the plug, taking her off of the medication that they've been used to keeping her sedated. And she wakes up. Doctors weren't expecting that. We get her back for 2 years and then begins a slow decline with Alzheimer's disease. And she just passed away this past January.
Mhm.
And that has been incredibly difficult on Julie. All the while, Julie transitions out of TV. ABC decides, well, Sinclair Broadcasting, hi, decides not to renew her contract. Very difficult for her. She transitions into another career. That doesn't exactly work out. Has to transition to another one, still searching for what it is she wants to do with the next chapter of her life, all the while visiting her mom in the nursing home every single day. She doesn't have another outlet other than me. And I'm not
Yeah.
there for her at that point because I'm escaping into work. And so a lot of our conversations were curt and contentious because we both had so much built up. And then ultimately her mom succumbs and she breaks. And I'm just getting sicker and sicker and sicker. Meanwhile, I'm transitioning off of traditional media. I start doing this whole other venture, finding my footing, trying to create a name for myself, and that takes an incredible amount of work, as you know, as somebody who built a business. So I wouldn't have been there for her anyway. I'm trying to deal with some childhood stuff that had happened, and like just doing therapy sessions, like just trying to cram those into my day, ignoring exercise. The only thing that I had going for me was my work and my diet. But the diet alone, sadly, I hate to dispel a myth for a lot of people, a diet alone is not going to keep you healthy long term if you're not, treating the other areas of your life, your stress, your relationships, your sleep, with that same kind of dedication. You're just not going to be healthy long term, man. It's just all the cards have to get in place in order for things to line up, and that's a work in progress for me. I don't know if it is with you, because I know you're still
Mhm.
somebody who likes to work really 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 hard, but man, it is going to take some time to reset and get acclimated to this new way of living moving forward.
Yeah. Well, I'm in the same boat as you because nutrition is important, 100%. But tap into the fact that, like, again, for me, I've been doing the strength training for almost 2 decades now. Whole food plant based for a decade. Prioritizing my sleep. Still end up having some neurological issues, some nerve issues from stress. Even though I'm sleeping like a king, I'm eating whole food plant based and I'm exercising. So to a certain extent, like, stress kind of overruled everything
Yeah.
from being go go go. And I know when you came down to LA to record, we talked about taking some breaks and doing digital detoxes. So I now do those once a month. And there's an element of that when we spoke, which was it's tough to do nothing when you're used to, hey, let's work 15, 16 hours a day, let's record, again, to a certain form, a little bit of escapism, but like, let's work because we're passionate, we want to serve. And then to be like, I'm going to take some time to just sit and go camping in the woods, no internet, no work, sit down and do nothing. It's very challenging. I think a lot of people struggle with that.
Didn't you say it takes you like a good 2 or 3 days just to like get out of that mindset of go 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 all the time?
Yeah, like that. It takes, yeah, 2 to 3 days for like the jitterness of like checking for a phone, thinking of like an email that needs to come through, or thinking of Slack, or looking at the stats on the show. It does take a while, and I think that's why it's so easy for people to be distracted with their phone. As soon as there's a downtime, they're like, oh, let's pull up TikTok, let's pull up Instagram, let's pull up Facebook, let's just kind of occupy our mind so we don't have to sit there and do nothing.
Yeah.
Because there's something that potentially, at least for me, increases anxiety from just not doing anything and feeling that we're not being productive. It was like, I could do more if I was like working right now.
Hmm.
But then realizing that sometimes doing nothing is the most productive thing you can do in the long term.
Give me a second here. Like, let's set the stage here, because I think that there are people who are watching or listening right now who might say, well, Chuck looks okay. Maxim looks okay. What are they talking about this taking a toll on them? Like, here's what people don't understand, because you look at me and say, well, okay, he looks all right. Guys, I'm telling you, when I say that my body burned out and I'm stuck in fight or flight mode, one of the biggest symptoms that I have here, aside from the GI things that's going on, and what you and I talked about in your podcast, Maxim, is like I feel like I'm drunk or I'm stoned pretty much all day, every day. It
Hmm.
is certainly worse immediately after I eat most of the time, but make no mistake about it. Like, I am not 100% right now. Like, I haven't had any alcohol, you know, I certainly don't do drugs. So why do I feel this way? Well, they think that it is that neurological symptom that's going on with this stress disorder, the DGBI. And that's also because I'm stuck in fight or flight mode. The blood gets diverted away from your digestive system, which would explain all of the bloating and the heartburn and the GERD like symptoms, the acid reflux like symptoms. And they were so bad at one point. They were so bad at one point that I wasn't eating.
Yeah.
I went months and months and months with just getting 200 calories a day. And when all of this kicked off, Maxim, I was only 140 pounds.
Yeah, I
But
think
when
that's when we saw each other at NHA last year. You were probably at your thinnest at that point.
oh yeah, yeah, I bottomed out at 117 pounds because I couldn't eat. Like, we're literally talking about 200 calories a day. It was a good day when I could get in a couple of tablespoons of defatted peanut butter. Like, I would just
Yeah.
reconstitute peanut powder, not PB2. It was literally just ground peanut powder that had been defatted. And if I could get 2 tablespoons in throughout the course of the day, an entire day, that was a win for me. And 1 bottle of water. And I got all the way down to a buck 17. And I remember asking a gastroenterologist at Johns Hopkins, a really prestigious medical facility, am I dying? And the gastroenterologist looked me in the eye and said, I don't know. Because
Yeah.
all of my tests kept coming back normal. And yet I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker and super malnourished. And that was terrifying. And that was everything to do with stress.
So how do you navigate stress now, knowing now, having seen the impact of what it's done into your gut and kind of how you're feeling on a day to day? What have you changed since kind of the some of the diagnosis and some of the news that you've gotten?
Force myself to get downtime. Um, as soon as we wrap this, as we record, it'll be roughly 5 o'clock Eastern where I am here in the
Hmm.
Washington D.C. area, and I'm shutting down for the day. I'm no longer doing interviews past the windows of 9 and 5. I'm not being available on the weekends. I'm clearly setting boundaries when it comes to work so that I can make myself more available to my wife, heal that relationship. Not that we were in a bad place per se, but I always want to feel like with she and I that, we're best friends. We don't have any kids, which means that we don't have to act like adults. We can be kids ourselves. And that's kind of something that we pride ourselves on, and just having those moments together. Like, I really value that because she has been an incredible ally for me through everything. And so shut it down and watch a baseball game, play a video game, go outside, walk the dog, make sure that I'm getting in my yoga, make sure that uh when I get cleared again to do exercise, that I absolutely prioritize doing that and just get rid of that stress and then sleep, man. Like, do your best to get to sleep. I am a night owl, so I am all ears on how people fall asleep, at a reasonable hour. But even just having that like cool, calm downtime at the end
Yeah.
of the day is super critical for me because it then sets the stage for me to get a decent night's sleep when eventually I do conk out. I would love to hear how you're able to fall asleep so well because I know you are notorious, as you say, for sleeping like a king.
Yeah. I have an alarm at 7:30 that goes off. And when that alarm goes off, then that's my cue to go and like brush my teeth, go into the bedroom and just pull out my Kindle and read until I fall asleep. So sometimes I'll read for 30 minutes, sometimes I'll read for an hour, but eventually I get bored of reading. So then I just fall asleep at that point. But to be fair, I'm more of a morning person.
Mm.
So like I'll wake up naturally around like 6 a.m. Pretty easily. But there was times in my life where I was more of a night owl. Then all I did was I accepted that and I did my productive work when I was being creative and I just slept in. So I woke up later. So I shifted my whole schedule to be able to sleep in, which I understand it's not so doable for most people. But yeah, just a winding down routine. No blue light. Don't eat too close to bedtime because it'll affect digestion. Don't drink too much water because you're gonna wake up a bunch of times to go to the bathroom and go pee. Obviously, no alcohol, no processed sugar because those are two things that will affect the quality of the sleep. And honestly, just for me, it's training hard in the morning so that by the time I get to nighttime, I'm tired, like I'm exhausted and I'm ready for sleep. And to be fair, I took a little nap before recording this podcast. I just snoozed out for 20 minutes and I was like, all right, cool, we're recording
Goals,
with Chuck. I gotta take a little nap.
goals,
Yeah.
goals,
Uh,
man. Jeez Louise.
but I have to ask you, like, when you started implementing all of these boundaries, was it as hard as you thought it was? Because I'm sure you thought about it before, because you probably had your moments where you're burnt out when you're working 16 plus hours a day. And you're like, yeah, I should probably set some boundaries here and there. but there's always a story we tell ourselves of like, yeah, but I committed to this, or I don't know how these people are going to respond. Like, so what was it actually like for you once you set those boundaries? Did people fight it? Did people respect it? What did that look like?
It was hard for me. I think that I had the hardest time with it than, anyone else. Because it's really hard for me not to answer like work messages at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. Like when I would do freelance work for other people, it would be nothing for my phone to ring at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. People wondering, is now a good time to talk? My wife was like, why aren't they respecting your time?
Yeah.
One, we're dealing with a little bit of a time difference, but two is like I always made myself available around the clock. So if I don't put my foot down and say, hey, you got to call me before 5 o'clock Eastern,
Yeah.
otherwise you got to wait until tomorrow, then of course people are going to feel like they've got access to me around the clock.
Yeah.
And, it's funny, the people who would do that the most, I'm thinking of one person in particular, they wound up really burning themselves out in a very bad way as well. And so you kind of, there's that phrase that game recognizes game,
Yeah.
and I certainly recognize that in this person. And I don't know. I don't know. Like I never wanted to do that to somebody else, but I always
Yeah.
let it happen to me at the same time. I don't know. Have you ever struggled with that yourself?
For sure. Definitely the first few years of starting the business, it was really hard. But I like when I started to get sick, when it started to affect my relationship, when my initial mentor got divorced because of how he was working, and I was modeling my life after him because, he was a family man. To me, he had balance. And when I discovered that he didn't have balance, I was like, oh, I can't be modeling this man anymore. I have to rethink things. So then I just started to set boundaries. I was like, okay, we can grow the podcast more. We can grow the business more. We can do all of these things a lot more if I set zero boundaries and I take calls at 9:30 and I wake up at 5 a.m. every day and I just work all throughout the day. But at what cost? I saw some people that I looked up to lose their wife. A lot of people lost their wife. I lost a partner to cancer. So not only they're going through divorce, I lost someone. I didn't want any of those two things to happen. I wanted to be able to have quality time with the people that I love. I saw people around me get sick. Again, like my late partner got sick. And then now, like hearing your story, you getting sick, there's no amount of money or growth that's worth any of those things. That's why I now do a digital detox for the first 7 days of every month. Could I grow faster and do more? Absolutely. But if I get sick, I can't do it anymore. Right.
Yeah.
I'll get tired and I won't be able to push. So just trying to learn from everyone around me. And so over time, I've learned to set those boundaries to realize that, yeah, it's just not worth it. Like, if we
Yeah.
get an extra, 10,000 downloads, but I'm burnt out and I feel terrible. Like, yeah, I want to feel happy every day. I want to feel
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, man. That's also been a hard pill for me to swallow is because I can go back very easily and look at the analytics
Hmm.
of the exam room and see like, oh man, yeah, there was a decent little dip in downloads there over the last 2 years. Guess what? What does that correlate with? The time that I was sick.
Yeah.
When I'm sure that even though I was trying my best to keep up with the pace of the show, that I just I wasn't giving it my all. And there may be an
Hmm.
intangible that you can't exactly put your finger on, but something's different with the show. It just doesn't have that typical zest that it does.
Yeah.
It may not be as rich of an episode as people are used to. And so there was that decline. And so what I'm seeing now is like as I sit back and I take better care of myself, try to get more rest, like we're seeing the ship start to right itself. And other people still see an incredible value in it.
Yeah.
And in a lot of areas, man, we're growing faster and steeper than ever before, which is really rewarding. And so I have more of myself to give when I'm present. Even on a day when I'm not feeling great, I have more of myself to give because I'm taking better care of myself overall. Makes an enormous difference. People would be surprised how much more productive you can be when your tank is on full at the beginning
Oh,
of the
yeah.
day as opposed to starting at maybe a quarter of a tank or even on E and pushing through many, many, many hours. Like it's just you're never going to be able to keep up with that car that's well tuned, gassed up and ready to go.
Yeah. Because again, you're a great host, and people can't really tell by listening or by looking at the podcast. And in same for like a lot of people, but there's an intangible there. There's like an intangible energy that's kind of being that people can sense. If I'm exhausted, people will like say it, and I was like, oh, I thought I hit it pretty well. Like I was smiling, I was high energy, but people can sense these things, and it's just that there's a different attraction to it that happens when you're more of you versus a tired, numb version of yourself.
Yeah. You know what's amazing though is the feedback that I've gotten from so many people who have found themselves in the same type of situation you and I are talking about. People who are stressed out and became chronically ill. Like I did a live show at a vegan SOS free restaurant in the Washington D.C. area, a wonderful place by the name of Green Fair Organic Cafe in Herndon,
Oh,
Virginia.
Gwen,
Gwen Whitaker,
Gwen, yeah,
absolutely. Did a live show there last night, packed the place. It was full, like 50 chairs, like which this is a tiny restaurant. So like it was
yeah,
like standing room only. But I mean, I was shocked how many people came up after the episode to share their own story with me. Similar struggles, like everybody's symptoms were definitely different, but
yeah,
stress was the common denominator. It was absolutely the common denominator for them, for people who they loved, who had been going through it as well. It was really eye opening for me, and it made me think, like, man, I I'm not letting people down like I thought that I was. And if anything, sharing the story is helping other people, come to grips with their own shortcomings, their own health shortcomings at this point. And I felt good about that last night. I really did. And so I think like, and then now we got like two dudes who are talking about stress, which I think is great too. Because it's
yeah,
it's not a women thing, it's not a man thing, it's an everyone thing, bro. So the more we
yeah,
talk about it, the better we're gonna be.
yeah. And there's no element of weakness in talking. I understand that it is difficult to say publicly in a podcast that thousands of people will listen to, but to be able to have that conversation like with your partner or a friend, there's nothing weak about talking about stress.
Mm-mm.
Because yeah, like you said, everyone deals with it, and I feel like people. Let me know your thoughts on this, but I think a lot of people are afraid to fall into the stress management, you know, tools that are out there. Because I don't know, when I first thought about stress, I was like, man, do I have to go live in a cave in the Tibetan mountains to just not be stressed and not, to not feel this way? But there's definitely a way to navigate it as you're living in modern life and modern society, that you don't have to isolate yourself and remove yourself from all of these stressors. Because to a certain point, some of them are beneficial in terms of building, mental, physical, and psychological resilience. But it's having no breaks that's the issue. Stress is a good thing to make you more resilient, but it's the no break part. 15, 16 hours a day every day, a few days like that, I'm sure extremely beneficial to help you build some resilience. But every day, the body, it's kind of like working out for 2 hours every day. Eventually, you need a rest day to start to
Yep.
recover from it.
Yep. Yep. 100%, man. You have to take that time to take care of yourself. You mentioned going camping. Well, I started investing my time in my body. So reconnected with the chiropractor. That's been really beneficial. I've tried acupuncture. That really helped. I'm not sure if it was the acupuncture as much as it was just going to a place and just completely zenning out for an hour. I
Yeah.
felt to be very beneficial. The massages, things like that, those are all really critical. But then, like on the more holistic and what a lot of people might even consider to be hippy dippy kind of thing, like working with psychologists who are especially trained in
Yeah.
DGBIs. Wonderful guy by the name of Dr. Ali Navidi. I was referred to him by Dr. Doug Drossman, who is a mentor of Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. I've got a lot of friends who have really helped me, and I'm like super grateful for that. Dr. Drossman is the godfather of DGBI. He's really the one who first kind of coined the term and did deep studies in this, really pioneered the field. And Ali Navidi is a trained psychiatrist in this area, and he does hypnotherapy on a
Okay.
lot of things and teaches you how to manage your symptoms with your mind, which sounds absolutely bizarre. And even if you would have told me 5 years ago, in the midst of hosting the exam room, right? Like, and people think that just like eating plant based, that in itself is pretty hippie. I was like, y'all don't know hippie until you've done like hypnotherapy. I would have said, like, no way I would have ever done anything like that. But it's the craziest thing because it forces you to relax your entire body, and it
Mhm.
trains your brain to get so hyper in tune with your symptoms that in a lot of ways you can kind of control them with your mind. It's like a little knob, right? It's like a volume knob.
Yeah.
You turn it up and you turn it down, and you turn it up and you turn it down. And so just by deep breathing exercises and taking that moment to pause and work on that, if I'm having a really bad day with really bad symptoms, I can turn the knob down from like a 10 down to like a 5 or a 4, which makes it manageable until you can get a really big break and then turn it back down to maybe a 2 or a 1. Unfortunately, we're not at a place yet where I can turn it all the way off, but going from a 10 to even a 4 or 5, I mean, that's a
That's
huge gain for me. And
yeah,
and
that's
so like I'm
massive.
really grateful to be able to do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a massive tool to have to be able to turn it down like that.
Yeah.
Um, so what does it feel like when you're doing that process?
It's wild. And I imagine that it's a little bit different for everybody because some of it forces you honestly to almost use your imagination. So it's like some of the sessions that we've done, it's like, close your eyes and then, take a deep breath and, imagine that you're standing kind of in a really, technologically advanced building, and you see this elevator. Now, I want for you to get on this elevator and go down to the ground level, and you'll know when you reach that ground level. You don't know how long that trip's going to take, and so it kind of forces you. All right, so what does this building look like? They said technologically advanced. Are we talking like a SpaceX supercenter? Like, what does this look like? So that for me is fun because I'm a pretty creative guy. The
Yeah.
only awkward part is like you've got somebody like watching you this whole time on camera. We do these sessions virtually, but on camera, they're watching you sit there, and you're zenned out with your eyes closed. And like that it takes a little bit of time to get used to, right? But then
Yeah.
like you just decide to go along on the ride. And eventually, like when you reach the ground level of this, like it opens up to a control center. And in that control center is everything that you can do with your brain. And they're like, now look over here. You might see a knob. It's the color's different for everybody, but find the knob specific to your symptoms. So, like if one day I'm having symptoms where I can't breathe, right? Find the one that's for your breath. All right, now turn that knob down. And I'll be damned if it doesn't work. Like it
Yeah.
sounds crazy, like some Nickelodeon nonsense. Brother, I'm
Yeah.
telling you, this is not Tiny Toons. This is not Animaniacs. This is stuff that works, man. It's insane to me how well it works. How well it works. So cool.
I've done some similar thing. If you go to like a Tony Robbins conference, depending on which one you go to, he'll do some exercises like that. So I believe you 100% because I've done some things like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, was it the imagination? The mind is very powerful when it comes to controlling those symptoms, and unfortunately, people only tend to be open to these things when they get sick.
Yeah.
If they're fully healthy and there's like slight, gut issues or bloating, whatever it may be, usually they'll just be closed off to it. It's like, that's some hippy dippy stuff. I don't want to touch it. But there's a lot of benefits and power into it.
So much there. It's absolutely insane. There has not been a single symptom that we have not been able to touch on. And I mean, again, this is just like the 101 level thing, and there's a lot more to it, but it forces you to hit pause. And the cool thing is like the more comfortable you get with this type of therapy, like the more you're inclined to open up and deal with the issues that may have been causing the stress in the
Yeah.
first place. We always talk about, well, what's your why? Well, why are you so stressed? And then it forces you to like dig deeper. Well, because I'm working so much. Well, why are you working so much? And then like you go to that next issue, and then you go to the next layer and the next layer behind that, beyond that. And
Hmm.
eventually you're talking about stuff that may have happened to you many years ago that you've been carrying around and like you think about from time to time, and you may not even think that it like is having that big of an effect. But like when you carry around stuff for like years and years and years and you just like never deal with it, like it's
Yeah.
kind of like a snowball rolling downhill. It's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you finally stop it. And the only way to stop it is to address it.
I can't remember where I read this, but it was like the 7 layers of why. You ask yourself like why you're stressed because of this, why, and then why, and then why. And about like 7 whys into it, you start to get to the core of like the underlying issue. And I think from my personal experience, I think that's why a lot of people struggle with their weight, struggle with happiness, they struggle with fulfillment, they struggle with going for the things that they want in life, but they're afraid to get them. It's because there's some events that happen at some point that causes them to believe that they're not worthy of it, that they need to. Self sabotage is very real,
Hmm.
and to a certain extent, overworking is to me a form of self sabotage, preventing you from living your best life, because you're numbing yourself with work or social media or gambling or whatever other um, things that people deal with. Um, yeah, stress is such a broad topic, and it encompasses everything. It can go as deep as when you were 5 years old. It can go as shallow as 2 weeks ago when something happened. Um, so, what are I'm curious because we talk outside the podcast. What are other boundaries that you're wanting to set for yourself as you kind of move along on this healing journey?
Just also a lot of what's going on with other people in my life who I share my time with, whether they be family or close friends, setting up those boundaries. It's really hard for me to say no. And it's hard
Mhm.
for me to solve everybody's problems, even though I'm a fixer. Like I'm wired to fix things. It's like, you got a problem, call Chuck. I'm Mr. Fix It. Like I've always been that guy. And I think it's just because I present outwardly that I'm emotionally stable and I'm able to navigate problems. And maybe I am able to navigate other people's problems so much easier than I'm able to navigate my own. I think probably a lot of people are like that. It's like, why
Just your
can't
own
we just take our
perspective.
own advice? Yeah, dude, I know you get this, man. It's like I I have a hard time solving other people's problems, especially like when it's like two adults having conflict, and it's just like, really, you kind of want to just like give him that proverbial like slap and be like, y'all are grown people. You can
Yeah,
handle your own drama. I don't need to
yeah,
be involved in this. Like, handle it. Handle your
yeah.
business. But it's hard for me not to like jump in there and referee and like just kind of squash the problem. I don't want to play that role. It does stress me out. And I'm
Yeah.
seeing like with a lot of people, like it's the same type of problem over and over and over and over and over again. It's like, y'all are both well over 30 years old. Like, you got this. Like, figure it out. It doesn't mean I
Yeah.
don't like you, doesn't mean I don't love you. It just means figure it out yourself, because I got no more of myself to give to you to do this. We're just going to keep doing this dance over and over and over again. You're not going to learn. I'm going to get burned out. That's not good for me. I got to put boundaries on like that. And that's something to this day I'm still working on. And my wife is very good at reminding me about that. She's like, they can handle it. They can handle it. Doesn't mean you
There's
don't
an
love them. Yeah, they can handle
exact.
it.
I was gonna say there's an element. I'm not saying that this is specifically for you, but for me, if definitely have been that, and for other people, there's an element of people pleasing into it as to why I've had a hard time saying no, and some of the people I know have had a hard time saying no. Like we don't want to disappoint them, and to a certain extent, you want to please them because we like to be liked. Um, and then eventually it's getting to that point where you're sick enough to be like, you know what, I don't care if you don't like me because I just want to feel good, so no. I can't do this thing anymore. And the beautiful thing happens, I don't know if I ever told you this story because we've had a lot of conversations, but I used to work at Subway growing up, and I used to be like the called the key holders. I'd open the store and manage all the money, whatever. And the owner, every time someone was sick, they'd be like, Maxim, can you work? I was like, yeah, cool, I'll help you. And every time someone's sick, she'd just call me and ask me and say, yes, 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 yes. Now I'm working 7 days in a row. I'm working double shifts. I'm exhausted. I'm burnt out. And I go to her and I go like, hey, why don't you ask someone else? I'm exhausted. She's like, well, because you always say yes. You can say no. And then I'll go ask someone else. And I was like, oh, you didn't tell me that. And that was such a big lesson of like, if I say no, the person that is asking will go ask someone else, and someone else will potentially not have the boundaries to say no, and that person will say yes. But like if we say no, especially if they're a grown adult, they're going to go find someone else to say yes to
Yeah,
them to help them with it, or they'll just be forced to figure it out. But that's such a hard lesson to learn and
it
to put
is.
into practice.
Well, here's the deeper part. Here was the next part of that I had to learn is like how much of that is also our ego, because in a lot of cases I had convinced myself like I am, if not the only person, certainly the best person to solve this problem. Like I know how to fix
Hmm.
this better than anybody. And so that then puts the burden on myself even more so, to be the fixer in this case. When in reality, anybody with half of a brain, a lot of times, can solve the same type of like childish conflict that I'm trying to referee. Like we make things way more complicated or give ourselves way more credit than we deserve for a lot of this, thinking that we're the only one to solve the problem. In reality, we've got 8 billion people in this world. More than half of them are more than qualified to referee this conflict. Or I'm sure that there was a whole roster of employees at your Subway shop that could have done the double shift for you that day.
Yeah. So you built it into your identity that you're
Yeah.
Mr. Fixer.
Yeah.
And so when an opportunity came, it was a reinforcement of that identity of like, oh yeah, I'm Mr. Fixer. I can fix it.
Yep. 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 Toxic
That's
thinking, man. Self sabotage, bro. Self
yeah.
sabotage.
Well, to a certain extent, there's like a beautiful component to it because you're reinforcing a positive aspect of you, but at the same time, it's driving a behavior that's causing you to be more tired, right? Like there's a beautiful element to it to like this is part of my identity, and it's a good trait to have because you want to serve. You have a massive heart. Like if you wouldn't have gotten sick and no one would have stopped you, you'd work 20 hours a day serving other people, doing the podcast, and always helping out other people. So then you're just basically getting a reminder that in order to continue to serve, you have to fill your cup.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that again, the identity is like there's a beautiful piece. There's like a yin and yang situation to it.
That is. Well, how sick is this? There was also a part of me that like just wanted somebody to acknowledge the sacrifice that I was making to do all of these commitments and always be the fixer, right? I wanted somebody to
Hmm.
say, man, nobody else but Chuck would do that. And do you know how many times somebody actually said that? Zero. Nobody ever, ever, ever in my entire life has said that. It's because people don't, by and large, care, or they don't see the sacrifices being nearly as large as you've made it out in your own mind to be. And again, like, and I know that going in every single time, I would say yes to do something. And all I wanted in return was like somebody to just say, thank you. You really went above and beyond. Just, and it never, ever, ever, ever happened. And that stressed me out more because I was always chasing that acknowledgement that would never come. And it hurt. Self sabotage makes you more stressed out. Sick cycle, man. We're getting deep today. We're getting deep today. Yeah.
So there's an element of um, giving a gift, expecting to receive a gift as a part of that. And I think a lot of humans do that when we're trying to do a service for someone else, and we're just kind of a part of us that's looking for that, that tap on the back because it feels good. We want that confirmation that we did a good job. We want to feel like we've been helpful, like, and especially if you have a heart to serve, we want to feel like we are fulfilling our mission, right, and our purpose to serve other people. Um, but there's but when you give a gift not expecting anything, that's a lot less stressful, right? Because if you give a gift to someone expecting a gift back and they don't give you anything, yeah, you get upset a little bit. You're like, oh, damn, like spent a lot of money on that gift, or I spent a lot of time and I'm not getting anything back. But getting to the place of giving a gift or a service without expecting anything in return, at least in my own experience, has only come when my cup is full and I'm rested. Like if I'm good and I'm taken care of, then I don't need anything else. Like I'm okay. But it is hard to get to that
Yeah.
place.
It's very hard to get to that place. And every day, like, that's something that I try to work on. not just, setting up the boundaries, but when I do decide to go in there with my, toolbox and try to fix things up for people, I really don't go in there. I don't want to go in there with the expectation of everybody say, wow, what a great job he did. Thank you so much, Mr. Fix It. Like, because again, man, you're just setting yourself up for heartache. And that's kind of also the definition of insanity, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result. Why is this
Yeah.
time going to be any different? It just needs to come from the goodness of your own heart, and that will be reward enough.
What's, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? I think a hard part of that is noticing that we're doing the same thing over and over again. Like sometimes we're just doing, we don't think, and we're not catching the fact that we are doing the same thing over and over again because we're so sleep deprived, high on caffeine, stressed out, overworked, numb. And, eventually we have these moments where life forces us to pause. And we're like, I have been doing the same thing over and over again. And obviously this isn't working.
Yeah. I think, that's when hopefully your lovely wife, Ivy, will be able to kind of tap you gently on the shoulder, say, hey man, like this is just not working for you right now. Like we have to rethink things, get you to think outside the box a little bit. Julie, my wife, has been a phenomenal resource for me in that. We don't always agree on 100% of everything, but it's great to have that other opinion and to help you see things a little bit differently. And 9 times out of 10, I will tell you that she's been right on those things. And so, I don't want her to hear that because I don't want her to run away with that. And then, that means that I'm going to get extra chores and an extra long honey-do list. But it's just nice for somebody who's not in your shoes to be able to look at the bigger picture and help you out. And when you identify that, again, going back to the heart of our conversation, you can readdress things and then get your stress levels lower so that you don't find yourself in the same type of situation that I've been in for the last 2 years, the same situation that you have faced, because make no mistake about it. Like, again, you look at us and you're probably like, man, these guys got their stuff together. No, I feel like a walking calamity, and it's not a fun place to be.
It is challenging. And, people always use the analogy of like a cup half full or a cup half empty. I think you mentioned earlier as well, like you can't pour from an empty cup. If you want to be able to serve, you need to have something in your cup. And I think you setting some of those boundaries and taking that time for yourself, the time with your wife to spend quality time, is you refilling your cup. Do you feel that you've figured out what is the thing that fills your cup the most at this point?
That's a deep question.
I got a story behind
obviously it. It's going to be like, yeah, dude, wow, that is a really deep question. I think obviously being there for my wife and having a best friend who's going to be there for me through thick and thin, like that's the most important thing. And I'm still trying really hard to prioritize that and making sure that that cup is always filled. And I also feel like that's kind of like the easy answer, because there's also a great deal of satisfaction I get from doing the show and, getting feedback from other people who are in a similar struggle or learn something through the show that has changed their life. Like, I love that. Like, there's nothing better for me than that, with the exception of making sure that my wife is feeling fulfilled. But damn, dude, what a loaded question. How dare you, Maxim?
Well, let me just point something out. The two things that you said were about servicing your wife and servicing others. You didn't say one thing to fill your cup that was servicing you. Like something that's selfish for Chuck, right? Because I'll set some context. When my late partner passed away, people told me and asked me that same question. You need to do things to fill your cup. And for someone that's not taking care of themselves for a long time, I was like, what the heck does that mean? What does that look like for me to fill my cup? Like, go get a massage, go walk in the park, go lay down at the beach. I tried all those things. I was miserable. Like, yeah, they felt good, but they didn't fill my cup. And then we've had this conversation before. I got back into doing things that I liked as a kid. So I went back into playing basketball. And then I like that childlike energy came back. And then all of a sudden, the cup was being filled up even more than any other thing that traditionally should have filled my cup. I was like, whoa, that's the one selfish thing I can do for me to fill my cup. That's not for anyone else, just for me. And so to me, that was like my realization. And to be fair, it took me 4 years after my late partner passed away to figure out that's the thing for me to fill my cup. So that's why I was asking you, because the two things you said were about serving other people. They weren't about serving Chuck.
Damn, man, you're making me think here. I mean, honestly, and I told you this the day that I was out there filming with you.
Yeah.
Like, I hadn't gone and hit golf balls in forever. And that took me back right to being in high school and working at a golf course, which was the greatest job I ever had up until I started hosting the exam room, when I could just play golf for free and be out there all day, every day. And, didn't have a problem taking out the trash or washing the golf carts. Didn't matter. Didn't matter because I got a chance to play golf. And it took me back to that, like, childhood, not having a care in the world. And I would love to do that again. I would love to just like carve out a day every week and just go hit golf balls for a couple of hours. Like, nothing would make me happier. I'm not going to be Tiger Woods in my lifetime. Don't have to be. I just need those 2 hours to just like chill and feel like a kid again, man. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I remember you lit up when we went to that driving range. Like, you were excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you should give that a shot. Again, you can talk about,
Okay.
hypnotherapy, massages, and meditation, but there's something about having that childlike energy that just fills you up, that you just kind of feel refreshed. And so we'll make sure that you and I, when we're at NHA, we find a Top Golf and again go hit some balls.
Bet. Bet. Let's do it. I'm gonna go back out there to LA. I want to like try to hit that boat that was floating in the pond at the driving range we were at, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I want to sink that boat.
I think I've hit it like once or twice in all the times that I've gone there. They're pretty challenging to hit. But to be fair, you had more control over your shot than I did.
Well, you also had a bum wrist that day. You had a wrist guard on. No way you were going to have any sort of control over anything swinging with one arm.
Yeah, but I mean, when I'm not injured, when I'm not injured, they're okay shots. But no, so that's awesome. That I'm happy we talked about that. I'm 100%. You should go golfing this weekend. You should go hit some golf balls.
All right, let's go.
Let me know how it went. You let me know what your drive was.
Fly on out.
Well, I'll be in Washington, so we can go hit some golf balls in Washington again.
Oh, we definitely have Top Golf around here, man. I know exactly where we're going.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yes, sir. There's one like just a few miles from, well, maybe 15 minutes or so from where you're going to be staying. So giddy up.
Perfect. I'll be there extra long in Washington. So I love that we're recording all of this because people get inside access to our conversation between you and I. Let's kind of wrap up the stress conversation, because we think we covered a lot in terms of how to dive deep, bring some awareness to it, things to kind of fill your cup. I'm curious for the journey that you're on right now, with kind of everything that you've learned from your own personal journey, from all the medical tests that you've been doing, the health professionals that you've been working with. What is like the top 2-3 big lessons that if you could go back, you would do those things differently and you would put your focus potentially in a different area?
Number one, listen to yourself. The rare moments before I got sick where I would hit the pause button and returned to whether it be work or dealing with something that I had been putting off, it legitimately felt like acid eating away at my soul. And to me, that's a huge red flag that something's not right, that you're not ready to be back yet. And you're forcing yourself to get back on that wheel when you don't want to be running on that thing right now. Like you have
Mhm.
to listen to your body and take that downtime. Address what's wrong with your mind, your body, your spirit, whatever it is that you want to call it. Because if you don't, you're going to pay a steep price. You don't realize it at the time. You just think, ugh, I got to do that again. And you think like you can do it until you retire. But no, man, you can't last that long. You will burn out. And number two, I wish I could go back on the show and talk about the other pillars of lifestyle medicine, including stress management,
Yeah.
and finding that purpose in the community, which can also help you alleviate stress. I've realized wholeheartedly, that the Physicians Committee is very much a nutrition minded organization, as it very well should be, because there is a lot of power on your plate.
Yeah.
But you can be eating the healthiest food in the world, like I was, and still suffer because you're not addressing the other pillars. And so taking that time to educate other people about that as well, because that's the best way for me to learn, is to do an episode. Every show for me is like going to school.
Yeah.
And so, I'm learning along with everybody who's watching and listening to it as well. And so to be able to steer the show in that direction, I think would have been really good. So listen to myself and educate myself and others. Luckily, I just have that kind of job, um, on paying attention to the signals that your body's naturally going to give you. And I wish that I understood the ramifications, man. I mean, I can't
Yeah.
tell you how many tens of thousands of dollars I've spent on medical care just trying to figure out what is going on with me. And we still don't have all the answers. Like, I'm still going to the Mayo Clinic the next day after the NHA conference wraps up. I will be in Rochester, Minnesota, getting tests for a number of days, looking for things, looking for more answers. Why haven't we gotten further? Is your brain fog or the drunken stone feeling, is that 100% attributable to the gastrointestinal symptoms that you have going on, or is it something else? Are the bumps that are popping up on your skin now related to your gastrointestinal distress, which is being caused by your stress disorder, the DGBI, right? I just had one, like I said, taken off uh, earlier this week, which was cancerous and basal cell carcinoma, and it's very painful. It's right on my temple. We had to cut it off. Luckily, they think that they got it all, but I've got other growths on me, and I'm going to be talking about this with Dr. Will Bolsowitz on the exam room. Is there a connection between gut distress and skin cancer? Preliminarily, it looks like the research says, yeah. I'm very much looking forward to doing a deeper dive. But if somebody would
Yeah.
have said, like, dude, you are going to become a complete medical mystery and you're going to feel like garbage, and your weight's going to plummet, and then your weight's going to bounce back, and you're going to be heavier than you have been in a long time because your metabolism is shot, and people are going to like start to question it, and they're going to say some not so kind things. Like, that would have forced me to stop in my tracks before I got sick and say, hey, I don't want to go down that road. I
Yeah.
want to address things now. Hindsight's 2020, but I wish I knew then certainly what I know now.
I think that's a good lessons for people that are listening right now that potentially may be feeling how you were feeling before you start to get some of those more serious symptoms and kind of having to start to figure things out because you know I'm new to America. I'm from Canada originally, so healthcare is free over there. Here it's a different ball game. So to hear you say that you spend tens of thousands of dollars just trying to figure out what it is, that's crazy to me. I Back home when we're sick, you just go to the hospital, you don't think of it. But here you have to think twice about it. Am I that sick? Like, do I really need to go to the hospital to check this out? Or am I good to kind of just wait it off at the house? Like
Walk it off.
it's a different exactly, it's a different thought process here. So I'm getting adjusted to that. So 100%, if people are feeling that stress, not being able, like, you should be able to step away from email. You should be able to step away from social media. You should be able to have your weekend, set some boundaries for your work. Um, I had that conversation with my dad. I was like, he's feeling stressed and he's getting older and he's not eating as clean as you are. And so I was like, hey, you should like take a break from your phone and social media. He's like, but there's my emails on it. I was like, how much money do you make from emails? He's like, 0. I'm like, then you don't need to look at your emails every day. I was like, I do this for a living and I don't look at my emails every day. I don't post on social media. I have a team to do it. So if I can step away from these things, the majority of people have the ability to step away and set those boundaries. And honestly, when you set those boundaries, just as you are, Chuck, now, look at how many people were inspired by your story. Look how many people were inspired to make some changes to themselves. You just have to go read through the comments of the latest podcast that you've been doing. Like you've awakened a lot of people to the fact that, like, hey, maybe I'm doing things wrong. Maybe I should manage my stress better.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, man.
Maybe I should go to Topgolf.
Let this be a warning. Or just go to Topgolf. Absolutely. Topgolf cures all. You know, there's the plant-based diet, there's managing stress, and right there with it is Topgolf. Get it on.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Chuck, man, I appreciate you taking the time to record with me. It's always a blast recording together. I'm excited to see you at the NHA conference. Any last words of wisdom you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, just if you guys want to hear the whole story of what's been going on with me medically, go check out the Fit Vegan podcast that I did with Maxim, where I put the whole story out there and go into greater depth, just to kind of paint the picture if you're not already familiar with it. And certainly I look forward to seeing everybody at the NHA conference and connecting with you and working hard to get my body back in shape. I mean, just if anything, let this be a lesson, my friends. Let this be a lesson. Address the stress just as you've addressed your diet, and you're going to be in a much, much, much better place. Don't wait until it's too late.
It's time to go from the weight loss champion to Jack Chuck version 3.0.
That's it, baby. I'm ready to put in that work. Let's go.
Awesome. Well, Chuck, man, thank you very much again. Everyone, thank you for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.